Building the Future, Green Building in the New Millennium, brought to you by Sustainable Homes of the Future.
Yeah.
Our natural world is in crisis. Buildings emit 40% of carbon globally. We need solutions now. Join the conversation today. Welcome everyone to Building the Future, Green Building in the New Millennium. My name is Ian Sollenberger. This is the podcast where we try to inspire people to be more sustainable in the way they live, as well as the way they build and beyond. And we're going to explore that today in a big way with Aly Daly. Really excited to have her here. She is by trade an interior designer, as well as a budding developer and former ballet dancer, artist extraordinaire. So really happy to have you on, Aly, and thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. First question is sort of a big one. Sustainability is a huge idea. It's a big term, and there's a lot of different definitions for it. And so I guess my first question is, I'm discovering through this podcast that that a lot of the ways that we're talking about, like, okay, what is sustainable? When I talk to architects, designers, things like that, we're sort of going back to our roots in a way, and that's what I hear a lot about. And it's technology too, and we're coming up with these fascinating technological ways to harness some ideas that have been around for centuries and really ancestral thinking and living. And I'm curious if that resonates with you at all as far as sustainability goes, and what your working definition of sustainability is in your work, in your life.
That's a multi-part question.
Yeah. What's your definition of sustainability is the easy question.
I think my definition of sustainability would mostly be about really applying kind of thoughtful practices in all that we do, not just in construction, not just in design, but really kind of, goes across the board in manufacturing and supply chain, and there's so many aspects of everything that we do in every industry that can be done in a more sustainable way that's less destructive to the earth and to humanity and to animals. And so I think it's at a very root place is about being more thoughtful about what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Yeah, definitely. Did being an artist, is coming from a design and artist or even dancer background, has that informed the way you work, the way you design, and transversely the way you think about the world and live?
Well, I think for a long time, I was very fortunate in that I grew up in a household where my mother was a fine arts painter and my father was a jazz musician. So I grew up having different senses kind of developed in different ways. And then, as you mentioned, I was a ballerina for many, many years professionally. And I think that appreciation of appealing to your senses on some level is kind of what fueled my interest in getting into design. I think I have somewhat of a natural aptitude for it as well. But I think that in my work, I really try to do that. I try to touch as many senses as I possibly can. And I think in the beginning stages of it was more really about evoking an emotional response and about the aesthetics of a space. But as I grew in my profession and I grew in my knowledge and my experience in not just doing the design aspect of what I do, but also in construction and that process, I started learning a lot more about the processes that are behind the scenes that people don't even realize before you even, get to the building lot. And so the more I explored, the more I learned. And then I think it was really, honestly, upon having my son, I really started thinking more deeply about the world that we're leaving our kids.
Yeah.
And so it kind of started to be a little bit heartbreaking to me.
Yeah. Well, what we do matters. And I think that realization is one that is picking up some steam here in the last couple of years, and certainly in the last couple of months as well.
For sure. And, and I think humanity as a whole is shifting, but that's like another part of the conversation.
Part two. Yeah.
Part two. But I do think that certainly people are starting to pay more attention to it, and making little efforts where they can. Do I think we're doing enough fast enough? No. There are some challenges to make that happen a little bit more quickly, but I think there's definitely increased interest in it, which is beautiful.
Yeah. One of the ideas that we have explored in our podcast series is sort of integrative design. And, hearing you talk, you're coming from the interior designer at the beginning of your career, which one might say is a very siloed profession. They bring you in, you choose the furniture and the, the walls and that's it. But I love that, that's not your approach. And through that, it seems like you've learned a lot about the other processes that go on. And so integrative design is one that says, all right, we need all the stakeholders in this project at the very beginning, so that we can talk to each other and generate good ideas and intentionally try to shift the focus of how we're building. And how did that come about? Were you doing some things in interior design already with materials and trying to sort of mimic or get organic materials? How did that sort of realization come about for you?
I think in the beginning when I kind of started I have a lot of commercial design in my background. When I lived in New York City, I designed worldwide for Calvin Klein and Gianni Versace and Perry Ellis. And so I did a lot of commercial design before I moved to Los Angeles.
Cool.
A little bit of residential, but mostly residential since I've been out in LA. And I think that when you come from a commercial side of the business, it's very much about maintaining brand image consistency. So I hate to say it, but they don't really care about sustainability so much in creating their brand image and perpetuating that worldwide. When you have the ability to make more of a significant difference is when you start bringing it down to a more personal level. Because when you're talking about doing residential design, and still some people don't care, they just want a nice house, but some people do care. And I think that the more I started learning about the processes, I really pushed my clients, especially for new construction. I found a lot of what was happening is they would have the general contractor come in and build the house. And then a lot of people hire the designer after that's done. And then they bring the designer in. But if you don't have a designer, and let me make the distinction. There's a difference between an interior decorator and an interior designer.
Right.
All right, an interior decorator is basically someone that's going to go and pick out your furniture and your vases and that kind of stuff. An interior designer is someone more that's going to be involved in the building materials and that kind of stuff. So I started getting frustrated because, the general contractors were picking materials that necessarily were not sustainable or were not even healthy for clients to be putting in their homes. And so I started really kind of pushing people to have me come on board earlier in the process so that I could give my 2 cents and help kind of drive the conversation into a direction of trying to, select more sustainable and healthy building materials even, integrate into the home. So I think that's kind of came along the same time that I started really learning about how these materials are sourced and how they're harvested and how they're transported. And so I think the general public, when they're building a house, has no idea what happens, before you even get to the starting line.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it's really trying to educate my clients on, the choices that they have. A lot of people don't realize they have so many, I hate to use the term eco-friendly, but
yeah, hey, it's helpful sometimes.
A lot of people don't realize that there's choices that they have.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, give the client the choice, and give them the information. And really, at the end of the day, you're not a salesperson; you're an informant.
I can't be their moral compass, but at least knowing they have options is a good thing.
Well, okay. So what I think is interesting about some of what you just said is that, you started off in commercial and came into residential, and that's where you feel that you got a better, sort of tuned in, I guess, more to, this is what's possible, and I can help these people make decisions. Yeah. The rub of that is that where you're really going to have the most impact on a sustainability scale and on a worldwide scale is with these huge commercial projects. 100%. And that ends up, we keep kind of running into walls.
Frustrating.
Yeah, it's frustrating because there are better ways to do all of these things, and there have been for decades. And the technology is here, and hopefully the scaling will get to the point where the cost can come down. It has for solar panels, it has for, some materials. Certainly there are better options, as you said, for all sorts of materials, insulation to, drywall and permeable materials, and, things that, again, mimic nature. I'm going to sort of transition a little bit. You are a proponent or a fan, I guess, of, when we were talking before, Michael Reynolds' work with Earthships, which is like the exact opposite of everything that we've talked about so far. Tell us a little bit. You did like a whole study on it. Tell us a little bit about what you learned from that process, and what from that you've been able to, or been trying to bring into the work that you're doing with luxury homes.
Yeah. So, I mean, for people that are not that familiar with Mike Reynolds' work, he's an older guy. I would classify him as a hippie, which is great. I love hippies. Yeah. But he, many years ago now, I feel like it was maybe 30, 40 years ago, started to try to build in a more sustainable way, and wanted to build completely off grid. And so he, had a lot of legal battles for a really long time, finally got the state of New Mexico to let him start to build on a piece of land, kind of proof of concept structure. And as opposed to like a traditional post and beam construction, what he actually uses is a large percentage of the building materials that he uses are things that he has found basically in the trash or recycling facilities or whatever. So the exterior walls of the house, again, instead of being like a traditional post and beam construction, he uses tires. So it's like kind of like a berm wall, and then the tires are packed with mud, and the tires are stacked like bricks. And then there's like concrete that's kind of put on the outside of both sides of the walls. What this does is creates thermal mass. And so when you have thermal mass with the exterior walls of the structure, you're able to control the temperature on the inside of the structure. Right. And then the front of the structures, he does a greenhouse where you have the ability to grow your own food. And then it also doubles as a heating system. So the houses typically face south. The sun's facing the greenhouse all day. It heats up in the greenhouse. There's windows on the top of the greenhouse that vent the heat into the house. So basically, just outside of Taos, he's got several structures out there now. And the way that the construction's done, he can maintain an interior temperature of 72 degrees year round, whether it's a blazing summer or covered in snow.
It's the ultimate passive design. You're
It's
using passive systems. I mean, what's funny is they're the Earth's systems. So, I mean, it's
yeah,
not
and
passive really, but
it's
they're
really, I mean,
non-mechanical.
exactly. I mean, my son was 5, and I threw him in the back of my Land Rover and just went on a road trip out to New Mexico because I wanted to see this for myself. And I had to say, stepping into one of those houses, if you guys ever have a chance to do it, you should definitely just go check it out. It's open to the public. You can kind of walk around and explore a bit.
That's awesome.
But when you step into one of these houses, I don't know how else to describe it other than it's like you're stepping into a living, breathing structure.
Mm.
Because even the airflow in the house is thought out with, the way they cool the house is they'll have a grill that can open and close on the wall. Then you have these pipes that go 8 feet underground, travel out, 30 feet, and then pop up outside. But because the air cools underground, when it comes out into the house, it's like free air conditioning.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
you're using geothermal and
exactly.
passive design, and it's all of the best
But
man-made things.
Exactly, but everything works together. He
Mm-hmm.
has a water catch system that goes into a cistern. The water's used 5 times. Like, it's just, so for me, the building practices and the building processes are genius. Where it falls short for me is the aesthetics.
Yeah, it's a little bit, I mean, if anybody's familiar with Cobb cottages,
Yeah, it's a little wavy gravy, right?
it's a little like dug into the side of a cave kind of
exactly.
situation. Yeah.
But I mean, some of it's beautiful. Like, he uses glass bottles on walls instead of bricks, and you've got this like beautiful sort of mosaic of light coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think there's a way to apply that process in maybe a little bit more aesthetically pleasing way.
Yeah.
But so I came back from New Mexico like all fired up. Like, how do I build in this way, but in a higher level of aesthetics to appeal to my luxury clientele? And
what did you find?
I found that I was beating my head against the wall because, unfortunately, as sound as this construction is, I mean, even the walls, they have a higher rating for seismic issues than post and beam construction does. But the Department of Building and Planning is so behind technology that you can't build like that. You can't build like that in California. So, and I reached out to leaders or elders on tribal land to see if I could build a proof of concept there. And they were like, no. So I've kind of hit a roadblock. But I do think it's coming. It's just, for me, not moving fast enough. But I think there's, you go into like all this bureaucracy about who's making money, and they want to make their money. And the Department of Water and Power does not want us unplugging from them, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of red tape.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bureaucracy, which is unfortunate, but it
is unfortunate. We're constantly talking about it, because they need to change. The USGBC here in LA, the Green Building Council, is doing a lot of really good work, trying to push for legislation around just not even smarter buildings, but cleaner, healthier buildings. And I think that's an angle that we definitely can take for this, because maybe you're not going to get everybody on board with climate change, but you can get everybody on board, hopefully, with the health of the humans that are living in these buildings. And I think that applies to that large scale concept too, where when there's lots of people interacting with one particular building, then should be extra mandated that those things are thought through.
Even commercial space, you're talking about how many thousands of square feet of building materials go in here, and there's a lot of flooring and carpeting and paint that off gases that's really bad for people to absorb into their bodies. And I think that there personally should be more regulation about that, but
how to do that is obviously, I mean, that's above my pay grade.
That's like moving an iceberg. So
Well, have you found any, I guess, methodologies or like materials or anything? I mean, the idea of thermal mass is obviously one that, yeah, you're using some different, you're not going to be using tires and glass bottles maybe, but that's something that can be incorporated into a more, single family home
For
or
sure.
yeah.
For
Well,
sure.
talk about that.
The thing is, well, that's funny because that's exactly where I took it. I'm like, okay, if I can't build with tires, but I still want to achieve thermal mass, how do I do that?
Right.
And obviously you can do it through traditional building practices,
Mm-hmm.
which is still kind of, yes,
Yeah, it
that
doesn't solve all the
energy
problems.
efficiency, but it's like, so do you want to take up square footage of the house to build a thicker exterior wall and save money on your energy bills? Or do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, you kind of have to weigh out the pros and the cons of which kind of direction you want to take it.
I think where it gets interesting is if you do use some of those things, and again, if you bring everybody in at the beginning and you're thinking outside the box, then within the confines of the codes and safety zoning and all that, there are ways to think through how to integrate the different systems of a home, how to do some things like gray water, recycling, on-site gray water recycling. There's some on-site stuff that can be done now. With some, the onion has been slowly peeling back a little bit. What do you see as possibilities when it comes to that? Do you, in your work with, I guess, higher end clients, like, do you see anybody asking for those things on a regular basis? Is that something that there's a demand for, or
some, but I think, again, one of the biggest challenges that we have is educating people. I mean, there are so many incredible building products out there that people don't know about. And, unfortunately, because enough people don't know about them and enough people are not using them, they're still expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? If more people knew about them and more people were using them, obviously the price could come down on that. It's just how it works. But so, there's incredible insulation products that are made from recycled clothes.
Yeah.
There's, hempcrete.
Yep.
There's
and what's interesting about hempcrete is that the process of actually packing hempcrete is a laborious one, and requires like very specific skills. But they're working on kind of doing rigid foam board hempcrete, and panelized, and exactly, like those kinds of things. So I'm glad. I mean, throw out more, because I think people want to hear about that stuff. And
and the other thing is like, and there's the solar generating glass.
Mm-hmm.
Glass on your windows in your house that generates solar. We all know about the roof tiles that Elon Musk has done, and
right.
So I think all of that makes a difference. But I also think just even in finished materials, where we've come, even just within the last 10 years, where people would be like, oh, I'm going to do a bamboo floor because that's eco-friendly.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly, like, I don't love the look of traditional bamboo floors, but manufacturers are doing so many incredible, beautiful things now with bamboo, whether it's tiles that are end cut or just the way they're laid. So, and even with stone, as opposed to using stone for countertops, the synthetic stuff or the man-made stone now is looking so much better.
That's cool.
And, for me, real stone has this depth and warmth and beauty to it that, you really couldn't find in a porcelain slab or a synthetic slab. It just looked like it was 3D printed on a tile.
Right.
But the technology of that is getting better and better and better. So it's looking more and more and more real. Because if you see how they take stone from a mountain, and it's devastating. Like, several years ago, I drove through Italy, and we'll come around the corner and you'll see this giant white chunk taken out of the mountain.
Wow.
And basically they drill holes in the mountain. They drop dynamite down on the holes, and then they blast a whole giant block out. If you can picture, almost like a giant stick of butter. and then it's craned off the hillside, and they sell the blocks at auction. And then the blocks, depending on where they're coming from, whether it's, you know, different kinds of stones typically come from different parts of the world. Like basically all the onyx comes out of Iran, Pakistan. A lot of the marble, statuary, Carrara, Calcutta, that mostly comes out of Italy. Mm-hmm. So then they take these big blocks, and then it goes to fabrication, and then it's sliced like a stick of butter, right? Yeah. But the hillside's decimated. It's gone, never to come back again.
Right.
And this is why you see the price of like Carrara or Calcutta going up, because it's almost gone from the earth.
Endangered species, yeah.
Yeah, and then you go into like all that mining. What happens to the runoff from the water? And it's contaminating water supplies, and it's killing, you know, ecosystems. And it's like, so it's not just about it's just not about decimating a mountain, but the effects that takes to the rest of the ecosystem around that mountain. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of heartbreaking when you see that happening.
Yeah. It's interesting talking about the built environment. I mean, so much, if you think about infrastructure, right? And so much of our infrastructure is intended to deliver poisonous materials or to chunk away at the actual good stuff, soil, mountains, minerals, you know, like,
forests.
Forests, exactly. Wetlands, you know, all of these things, like there's an equal, you know, but opposite action. I don't forget who said that, but my wife's taking a physics class right now. So
for every action, there's an equal or opposite.
Thank you very much. We also both have a Albert Einstein quote. You said one in the video you sent me, and mine is, we can't keep using the ways that got us here to get us out. Essentially, that's a paraphrase. Yeah. But that was an Einstein quote as well. And anyway, all that to say, you know, we should be building, like when I think of infrastructure, I think of, you know, roads, building. I mean, I think of things going up and being better, and like building people up, not you know, like clawing at the earth.
Exactly. There's technology now where they can lay materials down on road surfaces that generate solar power. Mm-hmm. Like, why are we not doing that?
Yeah. Well, and why are we giving subsidies to dirty companies when we should be giving subsidies to companies that are doing something for the benefit of us all, you know?
Exactly. I mean, you know, at the very beginning of this conversation, you were saying that like we're kind of returning to sort of simplicity and kind of old school. I'll tell you, we were just in Jaipur, India. I think I mentioned this to you, mm-hmm. Right before this whole pandemic started. Yeah. And one of the palaces that we went to, it's called Mirror Palace, and it was built in the 1400s. And it was very inspiring to me because you go into this palace, and then they have like winter palace and summer palace within this compound. Mm-hmm. And the way that winter palace was built, all of the walls and the ceiling were little teeny mirror mosaic tiles.
Wow.
So aesthetically, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But the person that was giving us the tour was telling us the reason they did it this way, which is genius if you think about it. That was Winter Palace. So it was built on the south side of the compound, so it would get the sun.
Solar heat.
Every single one of those little mirror tiles had mercury on the back of it. Yeah. So when they burned the candles in there at night, all that mercury heated up and put off warmth into the structure.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, you're talking
that's next level. Yeah, for sure.
15th century. So the whole space was heated just from candlelight, heating up the mercury on the back of these teeny little mosaic tiles.
Wow.
Then you go across the courtyard to Summer Palace, which is on the other side. And they had literally a waterfall designed into the residence that fell down like steps through the residence that did just a little mist. And then there were reed curtains on the front, because this was before windows existed, I guess. Mm-hmm. Reed curtains, and then they would throw water on the reed curtains, and then the air coming through the reed curtains with the water running through the space, acted as air conditioning.
That's incredible.
So this is like ancient heating and cooling. And I'm like, it's genius.
Yeah.
And it's simple and it requires no electricity. I'm sure somebody was down there pumping the water. But
I wonder if anybody died of mercury poisoning. That's my only negative thought for them.
Probably. Whoever was making the tiles, right?
Yeah.
But so again, I think that if we just stop trying to overcomplicate things and are kind of open-minded to kind of revisiting how things used to be done.
And then just doing better, because we got so much better technology now. So just take the idea and then implement it better, you know?
Exactly. Like hay bale construction.
Yeah.
I mean, it works.
Yeah. As you mentioned, you have to build some thicker walls, you know, to make that happen. But in the right context, that's perfect. And there's also, I mean, there are some, like, I've heard of like some clay plaster applications. And that's actually, I've heard of that in the luxury space, where people will choose to do that because A, it provides some thermal mass, B, it looks really nice. It's like an interior stucco.
I'm actually doing that with several clients right now.
Are you? Cool. That's neat.
It's a nice look. It's soft.
Yeah, it is really soft. It's
like
pretty.
Zero maintenance. Yeah.
And it's also, on top of all those things, I mentioned permeability before. It's vapor permeable. Yeah. And so you don't have to have all of the vapor seals and things. So again, you're minimizing, you're simplifying the design, but you can't do that on the back end. You have to A, have the smarts, and B, you know, have the materials and the application and get everybody to set together to say, okay, this is how we're going to build. And it's not going to be what you've seen before.
Exactly. And that's, again, goes back to why I feel like it's important in construction to have a designer on board more on the front end, because they kind of work with the general contractor in creating the roadmap.
Yes.
So,
and then get your engineers in there and tell them, you know, they're the ones that need to figure out how to make it cheaper, you know. And if you're all in the same room and you're talking to each other, then you have the opportunity to do that. You know, we're all on the same Zoom, I guess I should say.
Right.
Tell me what in your perfect plan, what would an urban Earthship look like? I mean, given that you know, if you're not doing glass bottles and rubber tires, I mean, kind of talk me through what's the most feasible application of that idea brought into an urban, you know, 50 by 150 lot?
You know, I think an urban Earthship, you know, I think a lot of it is about simplicity in design. I don't think conceptually these things should be overcomplicated. I think a lot of the furnishings can be built in.
Ooh, I like that idea.
So if you were to design, let's say, like a sunken living room, the area where the sofa would go would be built in. And then it's just about, like, cushions, for example, big cushions. So I think it's really about very thoughtful design and development in the front end of it. But I see it being very simple in construction, clean lines, soft lines, not a lot of right angles. Just something that feels more in one with nature, more organic. Obviously, you want to have a greenhouse integrated.
I was going to say plants inside is what I'm envisioning as you're saying this. Yeah.
You want to have a greenhouse integrated into it, because for me, part of that whole concept is the ability to grow your own food. And honestly, the way things are going, we should all be growing our own food anyway.
Yeah.
But, you know, and again, the way his water system works was, I think the first use is sinks and showers. The second use is the greenhouse. So the water comes from there, it gets filtered, it goes to the greenhouse to water all your food. Third use is toilets.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, it's 4 uses. And then the fourth use, it goes outside to non-edible plants. So you're using 1 gallon of water 4 times.
That's incredible.
So,
25% efficiency for those of you
yeah,
who don't like math. Yeah.
So, you know, if you think about it, if you have a water collection system, like why are we not doing this? It doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just about thoughtful design. I think it's not just thoughtful design about this is a pretty building, thoughtful design and who's going to be living here and how are they living?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what I like about that approach too is that you have to take the site, you have to take the climate, you have to take the topography, the region that you're in. Dare I say, if we're urban topography, then we're saying the neighborhood. You know, like it forces people to think about the space not just as mine, you know, but as a contribution to the neighborhood or to the landscape or whatever.
Well, listen, don't get me started on that because there's so much vacant land in Los Angeles, and I really feel like the city should be planting fruit trees and food. And you know, you think about, we have almost 150,000 homeless people living in Los Angeles right now.
Yeah.
Vacant land, and I don't think it's a big stretch to just grow some low maintenance fruit trees that can feed people. So if we can integrate the ability to feed ourselves through the design of our houses, I'm not saying to get all of your food from there, but you know, I think that we as a society have been too dependent on someone else to provide for us.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, we're kind of moving toward a place where we need to start sort of taking some of our power back to take care of ourselves. And I think if we have the ability to grow our own food and we have the ability to regulate our lives and our houses ourselves, I think that's really beneficial for everyone, you know?
Yeah. I've said before that it's not just about efficiency, it's about sufficiency as well. And I think that if you can put
I might have to steal that.
Please steal away. That's why I'm doing this podcast. It's free. Everything's free. You know, I just love the idea of smart design. And I think there are certain areas, and I think it can be applied to so many different areas, as you said at the beginning, when I asked you what sustainability was, you know, I mean, smart design is not just buildings. Smart design is, as you said, manufacturing, it's product development. It's not just the natural environment or the built environment, it's the human environment. It should be, you know, all of us sort of together figuring out how to solve problems better, you know, not just saying, well, they're going to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of people kind of poo thinking in this way because they're like, oh, it's so much more expensive per square foot. But, you know, even seeing what he was doing out in New Mexico, the cost per square foot to build is about the same, sometimes less than traditional building practices. So, you know, I don't buy that excuse. I think it's just, unfortunately, like I said, a lot of red tape and bureaucracy that the city wants us dependent on them.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll tell you that I recently built a house for a client in Studio City in California, and we were putting solar panels on the roof and wanted to do a Tesla Powerwall. And Department of Building and Planning would only let us put one. And if we wanted to put another one, it had to be 90 foot away from the first one.
So just red tape, just pure red tape. Really.
Like, why? Like, there's just, you know, and so
did they have a reason? Was it like a fire? Did they say it was a fire hazard or something? Or what was the reason?
They thought if one was going to explode, they didn't want it that close. Do you know how far away 90 feet is? We had to put like one down by the mailbox and one in their garage. It was like, so they were like, forget it, let's just do one. And I think a lot of that is because, you know, the DWP makes a lot of money. But
gas companies want to build more, you know, gas lines underneath our neighborhoods, and that's fine. Right. Yeah, go for that.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
No big deal. Those will never explode. With an earthquake. Oh, man.
So, I mean, listen, my dream would be for us to be able to start building this way and have it be recognized and supported. And I think, you know, to allow people the opportunity to be more self-sufficient and to allow us an opportunity to stop destroying rainforests and stop decimating mountains and stop destroying waterways and ecosystems. And, there's enough information out there now, and there are enough amazing building products available now. The technology is there.
Yeah.
It's just getting everybody out of our way to be able to do the best that we can, not just for ourselves, but also for our planet.
Yeah. I know you have a son. I know he's probably in school, and that's weird, and you're figuring that out. But I don't know if we, if the legislation and the red tape is so much that we can't do it here, would you ever consider going somewhere else? Either, another part of the US that, was a little bit more forward thinking, or perhaps someplace where the laws were less
It's funny
stringent,
that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Because I actually have a project in development right now to do just that.
Cool.
It's more of a resort project.
Oh, nice.
And
you don't have to give anything away, but if you want to, you can.
And my intention is to build the structures using these processes and practices as best I can.
Nice. And so the footprint would be like as carbon neutral as possible, and totally off grid or self-sufficient with solar and as much as you could.
Yeah, as much as I can be, integrating solar power, wind power, gray water systems. So
growing your own food as well.
A lot. We have 3 acres dedicated to growing food. So,
well, once tourism kicks back here, there are these places you can go to Italy and like work on a vineyard for a month, and people do that. Like there's enough desire, hopefully still after all this, that people will want to, I think they'll be cooped up for so long. They'll want to go have those kinds of experiences, ones that, hopefully lead to better stuff for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I really want to integrate in this project is classes. So if you wanted to come and stay and learn about biodynamic farming and how to grow your own food and how to live in a more sustainable way, that's kind of one of the things that I would like to do. It's kind of a passion project for me. So
nice, and a good way to give back as well.
Yes, absolutely.
That's really cool. Man, we hit everything that I wanted to talk about, and had some fun other conversations as well.
Yeah.
Aly, do you want to plug anything? You want to throw any websites out there, cool resources, cool things that anybody would want to look up, or you or whatever you're interested in?
My website is just my name. It's just alydaly.com, ALYDALY.com. And I'm always open to conversations and collaborations and brainstorming about products or practices. So I'm always open to conversations, and I think what I love most about what I do is the process. Reach out.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I really appreciate you being here. Aly Daly, everybody. This is building the future, green building in the new millennium. Thank you for listening, and have a great day. Building the future, green building in the new millennium, brought to you by Sustainable Homes of the Future.